If you're watching me right now, it is precisely June 13th. I have a tour that begins next week. With the tour, I won't be here on the stream. I'm going to be uploading a lot of the previous moments that happened over the last couple weeks on my YouTube, so stay up to date with it. If you're tuning in for the first time, I highly suggest you to join the Discord and cop a sample pack. And so if you're not a part of Discord, be on the Patreon. If you haven't joined the Patreon, join the Discord. With that being said, do this little cool transition thing that I'm thinking about. So I'm just going to do a transition like this. We have already done a part 1 and a part 2 for the absolute basics. And I mean the absolute basis of like the beginner's guide behind Ableton. So we have a track here that was created precisely back in May. And this is what it sounds like. So this was the beat, and basically we have to go from what we have now to a somewhat sort of a finished product. And I think where we need to begin from is addressing what is currently what needs to be talked about is this. So as you guys see, there is a drum loop track here and a sample track that sits right here. And a couple things that could be said is that if we were to play this at like a regular volume, let's say if I were to turn this down halfway, right? And you just wanted to press play, a typical question would be this. I'm going to play it again from the top and ask this question right after. So a question would be, can I potentially turn up what is happening in this mix? And the question is, yes. But there's something to be very, very cautious of. And I'll tell you this. I remember way back then. So, and I'm going to set a timer for this. Hey, Siri. Hey, Siri. Oh, my Lord. Give me like 45 minutes. I'm going to try and do this as quick as I possibly can. Not quick. I'm going to do this in a very effective time. 45 minutes. There we go. And so, I'm gonna take a little swig of my Celsius. And so the question is, can you turn this up? And the question is yes. And so you have to be careful with turning things up because there is some knowledge that needs to take place that you are aware of when it comes to sounds, okay? So, as you can currently see, if we press play, it does not sound loud, but you can hear everything. Because of the fact that you can hear everything, but it's not loud, puts you in a really great spot. Hold on now, player. I got something important to tell you. If any of you guys who are watching want to watch all this back, I currently have a thing going on called Full Studio. Access $8 per month for the entire catalog of all these Twitch streams. It goes back to 2021, all the way up until right now. As well, the Access Plus option that gives you access to the catalog, the consultations, and a 30% discount code to anything I drop in the future for my sound packs right here. So if you're watching this, cop the full access, please. I'm gonna walk away now. For more information, cop something from my store, wait for the email, and join the Discord for more. Now back to the video. Nothing is distorted, nothing is loud. And what creates unnecessary distortion is when a audio signal hits the red sign and it indicates that your signal is clipping. Now, what is fascinating about this is typically when people say when clipping happens, it's a bad thing. When clipping happens or when the red zone happens, it's awful and it sounds terrible. Might I suggest to you a thought process or a concept of clipping? You have clipping that'll happen regardless. Okay? So if a signal is loud and something is turned up, it'll happen regardless if you turn everything up. It's just a matter of understanding when it hits a signal and it's too loud. Do you have the ability to control it? And the question is yes. Yes, there is a way to control it. And so this is going to be a basic mixing tutorial. So at this moment, we have on this drum kit some really simple effects that are sitting in here, and not even just effects. I'm looking here and I see there's a compressor and there's a limiter. Now, if you don't know what a compressor is, I'm going to explain to you what that is. Let's say if you have a signal, like let's say these drums here, and I'm actually going to use this as an example. I'm going to turn comp all the way to 0. I'm going to simply press play. And I'm actually going to turn off the slapback. I want it to be very dry. No delay either. So, compressors are a dynamic processing function, which means if you play a signal and take that signal, right? If you take that signal and run it through a compressor, what the compressor does is it takes the loudest element of the dynamic that's coming through that compressor and either squashes it, right? And why does it squash? When you turn up how much of the compressor is hitting the signal or hitting the dynamic on the processor, it simply takes it and just squashes it. So when it squashes it, everything is the same level. That includes the lowest sound possible in that process of a dynamic. So it could be something as simple as my voice, right? Let's say if I were to completely take my voice off of a compressor, you would not be able to hear all the frequencies of my voice, especially when you lower it. But if we were to crank this thing to 100% and then also crank this compressor by 100%, you notice the quieter parts of my voice have now gotten louder. It's so loud now that the fact that you can hear the reflection of this room. That is how a compressor works. It makes all of the signal that's coming through the compressor compressed. It compresses. It takes the quietest things and makes them the same level. But you can control how much compressor you have on your signal. And it's really up to taste. And one of the great lessons that I learned from one of the instructors I had at Full Sail is, and it's actually unique learning about this, but the compressors are very unique because they're only a dynamic, not effect, but it's a processor. And so it processes sound and changes the dynamics of it. Now, there's so many different versions of what a compressor does. Compressors not only can compress, but you can also send signal through them and make it activate from another source. And so a good example of this is, you know how Kaytranada has that 4 on the floor and you hear that kick drum come in super heavy, but everything else just starts to duck? That's called sidechain compression. So we'll talk about it at a later date. But there's so many different ways you can creatively use compressors. It is a dynamic piece that people use to control the dynamics. Now, I have this thing here, and I'm looking at the drums without any compressor, attached to it. No compressor processing attached to it. It just sounds like really flat, really dry. And so if we were to turn this up, let's watch what happens. Barely much is happening there. So let's go ahead and dive a little deeper into what's happening here. I'm a little bit curious to see what's happening. So let's see what this is mapped to. What? It's mapped to a filter space? That's interesting. That is interesting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually take a compressor and put it on the drums. On the drums. So let's just take it and I'm going to show you guys how that works. So watch this. And as well, I have a drum mixing tutorial for anybody who's curious. You can watch this on my YouTube channel, how to mix drums. It's like a 2-hour long video if you want to watch it. But watch this. So this is the signal. And if you want to be able to control the dynamics, see those little peaks? That is the dynamic of a signal that's coming through to the processor. You can control how far this dynamic goes. And as you can see, all of the dynamics of what you're hearing the tambourine is down here, the kick and the snare are up here. But you can literally choose. You can choose if you want to control all the dynamics. And I'm going to show you how that works. Now, this is all according to taste. You see that? If we bring that line down, notice how it's taking the dynamic and just squashing it. But Kaelin, I just recognized if I were to mess with this compressor and the signal goes all the way down, it gets really quiet. Right. You're catching on to something really powerful here. So let me show you something. For every single time that you bring that dynamic processor down, you're making it just as quiet as the quietest signal. Eventually, the whole thing will just be squashed and there's no dynamics. And this is also part of a very powerful topic right now about like the loudness war and everything. So a question, and I'm pretty sure you're curious, how could I take the noise or like how low this is and make it match? And so this is what I like to call the threshold, right? This is a threshold line for how much threshold is allowing to hit the processor. Now, here's the craziest part. Did you know you can also control the output of how loud this thing gets? So if you want to be able to max out on how loud your dynamics or processor is using all the compression, you can change that. So watch how low this is, right? There's a little bit of a function here called out, and it says 0.00 decibels. Decibels volume. I'm going to simply take this and just kind of crank it up a little bit just to give you a little idea. So you put the threshold down, it squashed the dynamic, and you need to make it louder. Let's go to out and make it louder. Kaelin, but it's in the red. I'm glad you said that. There are different modes for this compressor. You have peak, and I'm going to show you guys what it says here. You have peak mode. It responds to short peaks within the signal. RMS mode, which is root mean square mode. It's less sensitive to the short peaks, which is why you look at what's going on here. it's not getting the whole thing. It's like just about squashing it enough. So you can actually get the whole peak of a whole dynamic and control that. But Kaelin is still in the red. What's going on? I'm going to explain it. I'm telling you how this works. So something about this as well. There's also expand mode of the compressor. I forgot to say that. There's expand mode, which the compressor acts as a upward expander. Output level will increase as the input level exceeds the threshold. So I'm going to play this drum loop on all three modes. Ooh, it got louder. It sure did. And I'll tell you exactly why. Notice that it is actually pushing the peak instead of ducking the peak. Fascinating, isn't it? Kind of crazy, right? So you already have something that's knocking already, but you want to be able to control it. And long story short, what they don't tell you is in Ableton, there's the drum bus. What they did cleverly was create an expander and a peak. And you can control that. And guess what it's called in other plugins? Peak and expand in other plugins is called transients. The transients of the signal. So Kaelin, what are you trying to say? I'm basically trying to say you can control the transients of a dynamic signal to either be squashed or to be pushed. So wait, it's no different than expand and peak? Cleverly, that's how they programmed it. They just named it a little bit different. So you can control the peaks. The peaks, my brethren. You can control the peaks. So let me show you a little trick. I'm going to lower this by like negative. Will this be posted tomorrow? Yes, it's going to be up tomorrow. So -8. I'm going to go to -8 on my volume. Now watch this. Watch this. So here we go. I'm going to go to the out. Perfect. Now we can just. But Kaelin, it's still in the red. How do I change this? I'm going to tell you. So you figured out the dynamics and you wanted to be able to push the dynamics, right? Sure. But notice how it's clipping. Yeah, it is. Now, let me show you a little bit of a golden goose, as I call it. Your game-changing element that's going to be able to control the peaks, the clips, the valleys, and the RMS and all that. It's going to be able to control this. Number one thing is going to change the way that you approach all of your mixes. And I learned this from one of my mentors. One of my mentors said, for every single thing that you add to boost your signal, you need to add a saturator. Now, Kaelin, what's a saturator? I'm glad you asked. So, there's a way that I typically like to approach. I love to approach this from this perspective. So, this is a saturator, right? Okay. Well, what does it do? Well, a saturator is a device that is specifically aimed for adding musical harmonics, not just from the frequency aspect, but it has the ability to boost a signal via harmonics. Okay. Well, how does it do that? Well, there's this thing that all saturators have called drive. And so for every signal that you throw through this thing, it has the ability to change the gain of whatever you're sending through it. Okay, what is gain? Well, it is the amount, not necessarily volume, but is the amount of signal that you are sending. And it can be volume. You could think of it as volume, but it's a little bit deeper than just volume. This input drives allow you to be able to control how much you're sending. So think about how like volume goes to max 6, drive goes to 36. And I don't want to play that for anybody because that's a little bit too loud. It'd be a meme tomorrow morning. But for every single signal that you have in your session, you need to throw saturator in it. Okay, so for the drums, what would I need to do to make it not clip? Well, let's go back to this here. I'm going to go back to the volume and go to -8. And I'm going to simply press this button. What is this button, Kay? Oh, I'm glad you asked. It's a soft clip. A soft clip. What is a soft clip? Well, I'm glad you asked. A soft clip, in a basic way to explain it, is whenever your signal is getting ready to clip, it has this ability to take the loudest part of your clipping and just stop it. It just stops. It may still sound like it's clipping, but it's actually a good thing. Why is it a good thing? Well, some of the best drums that you know have a soft clipper built inside of it. A little bit of a backstory and a little bit of history. Did you know that Dr. Dre's drums all come from the sound of an SSL console being clipped? So his drums for ain't nothing but a G thing, baby. You know how his kicks and his snares, all of it sound like it's smacking you right in the face? It's because there was a automatic clip sitting in an SSL console that allowed it to sound perfect, just enough before it hit the red zone. And so if you were to ever if you ever get curious, load up any one of Dr. Dre's drums or any of his songs, you'll see that all of his drums are very close. They're very close to that red, but they don't clip at all. It's because the board that he was running all of his sounds through, the SSL console, had this natural capacitor that automatically clipped things. And it sounds good. Not distorted, but it sounds amazing. So you turn this bad boy on, and a trick and a rule of thumb is to simply crank and go down. Okay. All right. So if I'm going to crank, how much should I crank it by? I'll go by 10. Okay. So let's go by 10. Let's put in plus 10. Press play. Okay. Whoa. Whoa. So wait. This just made my drum sound so much more like, ah. Yeah, it did. Can I turn it up? You can. How can I? Look at your volume over here. It's -8. Yeah? Turn it up. Okay. Dang. So wait a minute. Hold up. You mean to tell me I can make it sound like it is like driven, and I can take all the levels of what I'm playing and run it through the saturator? Yeah. Like everything. And I mean everything. But okay, so you mean to tell me I could take the same thing and apply it to the whole mix? Right. But let me hear it again. Okay. It's so loud though. Can I make it sound like it's knocking but not so abrasive? Sure, you can. Okay, how do I do that? See how you have it on 10? Yeah. Turn it down a little bit. Okay. Let's try it. Ooh, here we go. Here we go. Here we go. That's cool. But it's still kind of abrasive. Can I do something like in the middle? Man, you can. And let me show you. They have many different types of curves that allow you to be able to clip. Because that's all this is. This capacitor, it's emulating a capacitor that's clipping your signal. And there's a good clip. There's a such thing as a good clip. And so there's 3 of them. You have soft sine, medium curve, hard curve, synop fold, digital clip, and wave shaper. Oh, okay. I don't know what any of that means, but we'll get there. We'll get there. M. Faka says, I prefer glue compressor soft clip. I'm glad you said that. Now, here's a fascinating thing about glue compressor. For whatever reason, the way they set things up in Ableton, you can utilize whatever version of the compressor. You can utilize whatever version of setup they have here, but you will probably be able to get more control out of the actual saturator, and I'll tell you exactly why. So, see how there's a drop down button? Sure. You open it up, you can detail how much the clipping of your soft clip goes for all processing. And maybe with glue compressor, they automatically have it tailored so where you don't have to mess with it. But me, I'm a drum designer, and I love to be able to have a little bit of sense of control with all the aspects of what I'm using. Matter of fact, some might say that the GOAT way of having your drums automatically be able to knock is simply having analog clip change to hard curve. Okay. Well, what does that do? Press play. Okay. Jesus! That's a lot. Yeah, it is. Well, how do I lessen that? Well, did you know there's a dry wet over here? Yeah. You can turn that down. And look at the signal. Look at where it's grazing at. My sweet spot, and it's literally finding the sweet spot. So hard curve is a good one, but let's go to medium. I kind of like that. It's a sweet spot. You got to play around with your dry and wet signals. The best way that I've learned how to mix is literally to play everything from cranking and turning it down as you go. That is how mixing works. It allows you to be able to use your ears in a way that makes more sense. Okay, Kaelin, I get it. All right. So I like it. Let me ease back on the dry wet. But the output is still kind of loud. Well, over here, there's an output level. And you can adjust that. So let's turn it down. Okay, but it's back low again. Crank the drive a little bit. Okay. Still a little abrasive. Let's go something a little softer than this. Go to soft sine. Okay. Now crank the drive a little bit. Crank it. Turn it up. Here we go. Okay. Now turn up the output. Okay. Ooh. That's perfect. But can I address the dynamics a little bit? Yes, you can. So let's go back to the compressor. Turn it down a little bit. Ooh. Clean. I love it. So you mean to tell me I could apply this to a whole session? You can. All right. Well, how would I do that? Well, I'm going to give you a crazy trick. You've already set the groundwork for one element, and I mean just one element of this entire joint. So if you do it to one thing, not sure if you call that a clip. Oh, it's not clipping at all. Look at that. So if you look at the signal, it's just a hair there, but we're nowhere on the red, which means everything you're hearing is perfectly intended to crank and dial back later. Okay. So the threshold, ease back on a little bit. You ease back a little bit. All right, so if you want to be able to apply this to everything, simply take Shift and select both of these effects. What do you mean? So you know how you just clicked this? You just click this, and they're both highlighted. Yeah? Well, you can Shift and click and press copy. Copy. Okay. Well, where am I pasting this? You're going to paste it on that Love TKO track. This one right here? Yeah. I'm going to paste it right there. All right. We don't need that. Let's go ahead and press paste. Interesting. So let's go ahead and press play and play it together. Ooh, Kaelin is loud. It's clipping. It's clipping. Oh, yeah? Yeah. Want to turn it down a little bit? Sure. Okay. Turn this down a little bit. Now, let's see what we have here that you don't need to have. This sample does not need to have the crazy dynamics because you already have something with dynamics. And this is going to be one of the biggest things that you're going to learn in this lesson. Yeah? Well, what is it? Well, every single track has steak and potatoes. What does that mean? Well, steak and potatoes simply mean that when you have steak and potatoes, right? Steak and potatoes is very filling, right? Okay. Now, if you looked at steak, please don't blow my mind. Steak is your protein, okay? The potatoes are a vegetable, yeah? And they're your nutrients. So what do you mean? I'm saying that steak obviously is more filling than the nutrients of potatoes, right? And if steak goes with potatoes, that means one thing needs to be more important and it joins the other. We don't make steak and potatoes to try and make the potatoes taste like potatoes. We're trying to make the potatoes taste a little bit like the steak, right? Yeah. So that means in this session, you need to be able to pick one thing that everything is revolving around, and that is what carries the remainder of your track. So I have a drum loop, right? And I have a sample, right? And if the drums are dominating the whole mix, right? Then that means the sample needs to take a back seat. Bingo! Yes, steak and potatoes. So let's mute the drums for a second. Okay. All right. Mixing is steak and potatoes, jazz improv, playing the butter notes. Yes, literally, yes. Mixing is steak and potatoes. Simply steak and potatoes. That's what I'm gonna name this video, steak and potatoes. But you have this sample and you wanna be able to level this out with the beat. Mind you, I'm not using any EQ, I'm not using any of that. We're just talking about levels and utilizing your levels to be able to make space. So if your drums got all the dynamics, right? So play the drums and solo them. Okay. That means your love TKO needs to be controlled a little bit. Okay. What ways would you do that? Well, there's two ways. You can simply utilize the compressor to squash the entire signal. What do you mean by squash? So remember how I told you about the threshold and it was taking the dynamic and making it really, really quiet? Yeah. Well, you got to utilize that and turn it down. Okay. It's still on expand though. Change it to peak. Okay. But it's more of a peak. Okay. All right. I see. So you're going to hit peak. Now mess with the threshold and bring it down. Ooh, okay. That's really low, Kaelin. I don't really hear much. Your dry wet is on 25%. You might want to turn it up. Oh, okay. Interesting. Okay. Now, if you play that with the drums, what happens? Unsolo them. Well, play them with the drums. But it's still clipping, though. You got to turn some stuff down, though. You got to go back. You got to go back to the saturator and turn some of the saturation down. Okay. Turn the drive down a little bit. But now the sample feels really low, Kaelin. What do I do? Well, let me put you on. There's two methods you can go by to do this. Your gain on the actual sample. So double click it. Okay, double click it. I did it by accident. Let's see here. You're gonna turn up the gain a little bit. Don't worry if it looks like it's clipping, because I promise you it's not. Okay. Okay. Now it's just sounding loud, but we got to control it a little bit more, right? So let's go ahead and mess with it a little bit. Let's go ahead and mess with it a little bit more. Let's make sure this saturator is cool. Let's mute the drums real quick. Okay. Let's turn it up a little bit. The volume of the sample, like in the compressor. Okay. Now what's interesting is it's squashing all of the peaks. So let's give it some give. Let's try RMS instead. Okay. And I hit peak again. I don't necessarily hear a difference. Well, there is a little bit of a difference, and I'll tell you exactly how I noticed it. How did you notice it? Well, you can clearly look at what the compressor is doing. It is taking that peak and every possible frequency that is hitting this thing at the same time is being affected by the processor. So it's moving like this. Now, how would I apply what you're saying to this beat? Hit RMS and watch how different it looks. It looks smoother and it sounds smoother too. There's a difference between the two. So make sure you're careful with how it works. As well, they have different views of how it works. Just keep messing with that threshold. And turn the drums down a little bit. Play it together now. Okay. It's getting better now. Up. Slight peaks, but it's okay. It's all good. Now, what's really unique about this is this. What's up? So you can go back and mess with the peaking on this, because that drum is really, really hitting. It feels a little bit more blended now. Right. It feels like you just blended two signals that were not there. But Kaelin, I still see it a little bit in the red though. Let's see where the red is coming from. Let's see where it's peaking at. We're right at the cusp of about to clip. So there's an interesting lesson to be learned here in this moment. What is it? Well, the interesting lesson is this. When you're using these tools like a compressor, it allows you to be able to get the drums to be more in front and everything else to be something that holds space. Your drums are your steak and the sample is your potatoes. Those are your nutrients. And so now you can have fun with this. Yeah. You can have fun with this. Hey, look. Even though it's hitting the red, it's barely noticeable. It's like barely noticeable. Now, what's interesting here is this. They have so many different types of effects on these drums. So let's go back to like the drum kit real quick, okay? Let's go ahead. Curious to see what this attack knob does. What is this linked to? It is linked to literally the volume attack of the whole drum kit. Yeah, well, why would that be important? Well, this thing allows you to be able to do a couple things. I'm already having an expander to hit the additional peak to really push it, okay? And with attack, you can be able to push it a little bit more. Is it a processor? It isn't. Then what is? It's not a processor. This is on the inside of the sample. If you look closely at this sample, if I just click this right here, watch what happens to this side over here when I turn this knob. Oh, wait a second. I think I see what you're doing here. So you can affect the attack of the whole. Yeah, you can affect the attack of the whole thing. I'm curious to know what happens if you mess with it. Okay, let's mess around. It feels like softer, but it's still hitting. Okay. So with that being said, press play. All right. I notice it's close, but it's not all the way clipping. Right. That's exactly what you want. You wanted to get close, but it is not necessarily clipping. Get close. And I'm actually kind of curious. How so? Well, the compressor has an attack on it. Yeah. And it has a ratio. All right. Well, let's see here. What does a ratio mean? Well, it says here on the side of Ableton here on the help window, it says it sets the ratio of the expansion. between the input and the output. For example, a ratio of 1 to 2 means that for every decibel of volume you put above the threshold level, the output will increase by 2 decibels. A ratio of 1 results in no expansion. So in order to be able to get expansion, we need to raise this thing past 1. Precisely. So let's go ahead and crank the ratio a little bit. Wow. So that's actually kind of cool. Yeah. And you could do this for the entire set. Now, here's the fascinating part that I think you need to understand. If you decide to add anything else, like for Love TKO or anything else, you need to do this same process for everything. Matter of fact, I'm going to show you something really cool that you need to know. Yeah? Well, if you like what you just did as a preset, wouldn't you want to come back and use the same setup again? Yeah. All right. So I'm going to show you something cool. Okay, show me. Well, here you go. Let's say you want to take these two things and turn them into something you can use again. How would you do that? Well, I see there's this little floppy disk, right? But you said for both of them, right? So if you mean for both, you mean to tell me you can combine these two things together? Precisely. And this is going to be a game changer for you. Let's say you want to combine these two things into one preset. You can take this, hit Shift on your keyboard, and select Compressor and Saturator. And what you're going to do is you're going to press the right button. Okay. What do I do after that? You're going to simply press Group. And watch what happens when you do that. Okay. Oh. What just happened? Well, I'll tell you what just happened. This is now what I like to call an Ableton Live rack. Whoa, how do you know that? Well, if you look here, there's a whole sub menu. There's macro controls, there's variations, there's devices, here's chainless, and we'll break that down in a whole different video at some point. But for now, you need to understand that this is what it is. So I need you to double click on that far left point. Far left point, it says audio on the on sideways. It says audio sideways. Oh, you mean this? Yeah, double click it. It's not doing anything. Oh, my bad. Hit this button right here. Okay. Ooh, now what is this? Well, this is going to be your best friend, because if you want to be able to access what you just did in a easier way, you can apply any of these knobs to this effect rack. Okay. And so how would I do that? So let me show you something really simple. See where it says map? Yeah. Press map. Notice how it turned green? Yeah. Well, you see it turn green. What should I do? Well, see how it says it has green? You can literally select this, select any one of these parameters, and then click one of these things that says macro 1 or macro 2 or macro 3. Any of them work. Okay. I'm going to pick this one and I'm going to press map. Oh, what just happened, Kay? Well, I'm going to tell you. After you map the second one, what's the second one I should map? You should go back to that saturator. Saturator, yeah. Hit that dry wet from saturator. Right here? Yeah, click it. Boom. And press map. Okay. All right, now tell me what just happened. Press map right here. Okay. And you're going to want to take the macro controls and lessen the buttons. You can, wait, lessen the buttons. Press this minus and watch what happens. Oh, so, okay. Now, press this button right here to show and hide devices. What just happened? Well, you just collapsed everything you did with this sample into one rack. And it's now as small as 2 knobs. So if you want to affect any part of this, you can go and mess with these 2 knobs. Okay. Now press play. Okay. Now mess with the dry wet. Now mess with the other one. Wow. So you mean to tell me I just put saturation in one knob and compression in the other knob? Yeah. Yeah. And you can label them. You can label these? Yeah, you can. How do you do that? Well, right click on one of the knobs and see where it says rename? Yeah. Hit rename. Put compressor. Okay. All right. And what next? This one right here? Yeah. Put saturator. Okay. Okay. You want to color it? You can put colors on these? Yes, you can. Put the colors on them. Right click on it and you'll see colors. Ooh, I like blue. Okay. And saturator, let's make it red. Okay. Boop. Now you have a simple way of doing it. There's also a command. If you want to do it quickly, just hit Command R. Like select this and press Command R. So Command R. Oh, okay. That's kind of cool. Yeah. Yeah. And you can do that over the whole thing. What do you mean the whole thing? Your entire session has the ability to be renamed by pressing Command R. And I mean anything. Anything you select can be Command R rename. What? So wait, I can go over here and click this drum loop and be like Command. Oh, drum pattern. Okay. And if you want to duplicate it, you know what to duplicate? Command D. Bingo! Command D. Yes. And just keep on going. All right. Now, how do I go back? Well, look at the top of your screen. You're at the very end of your session. The very end, but I don't want it to end. Go back to the beginning. Okay. Okay. Yes. And just duplicate that same thing. You just gain the sample. Now play from the beginning and watch how everything sounds. Okay. Kind of want to turn up the drums. Go for it. Okay. Wow. That sounds much better. I know. And I do this with everything. Now, if you know Command R, you need to remember this one thing. All the work we just did. 2 things. So see how you had that floppy disk thing you mentioned earlier? Yeah, but where is it? Right over here? Oh, right here. Save it as a preset. Ooh. Okay. What am I saving this as? Save it as levels. Levels? Yeah, levels. What about leveler? Yeah, I like how you're thinking. Yeah, leveler. Leveler. And bingo. Anytime you get curious, that thing can be loaded up at any point. What do you mean? It can be loaded up at any point. So I'm going to show you something even more cleverer than this. Yeah? Well, if you ever want to access the presets that you make, see that on Ableton, it has that little thing at the top left corner that says collections. Yeah, Yeah, it has the colors. Yeah. Let's say you really want to save it to a color. Yeah. Well, you see where it says most used presets in that top left corner? Yeah. You can click and drag it to any one of those colors. Wait. So you're telling me, I'm telling you, you can go and literally pick that same preset from that color. You're kidding me. I'm not kidding. Yeah, there you go. There you go. It's right there. You can pull it up and drag it into your session. Drag it? Yeah, drag it. Where at? You don't need to drag it really anywhere, but if you want as an example, you can just drag it into your session. Oh, wow. Okay, yes. Okay, that's so cool. Now, you did mention another Command R function. You never said it. What was the command? What was the function? Oh, yeah. I remember. So if you want to be able to save all this, what do you do? Go to File. Well, you could do that quicker. How? Command S. Command S. Okay. You just saved all that progress. Now press play for everything. The beat knocks. Everything is there. And there's barely any clipping. Should I do a speaker test to this? Sure, go for it. All right, let me turn off my microphone. Gonna turn off my mic. Turn it off. Boop. And that is part 2. I'll be talking part 3, more about EQ, more about the levels, more about the balance in a later time. But for now, that's part 2. And I appreciate everybody that watched. And yeah,